remember when I first heard about the St Bees man story. It was fascinating in that it hit the headlines, it was really big news, everybody was very excited, then it sort of faded away.
Archaeologists just found a medieval knight who looks like he died yesterday, even though he's been buried for over 600 years.
Somebody came to me and said, have you seen this video of the autopsy? And I thought, this is amazing, it's 700 years old, an autopsy of an individual rather than a skeleton.
This discovery at St Bees Priory has baffled everyone. The man, identified as a nobleman named Anthony de Lucy, was found with his skin, hair, and internal organs still there.
And I remember just looking and just thinking, oh my God. Because when he lifted the coffin lid, or the bit that he'd cut off, there was this body in a shroud.
But the thing nobody tells you is that the clues found on his body point to a violent end on a forgotten battlefield. And the secret to his impossible preservation might not be what you think. The truth is far stranger than any legend. A secret sealed in lead. As they dug through the layers of history, they hit something unusual. It was a large coffin, and it stood out immediately. This wasn't a simple wooden box or a plain shroud burial common for most people. This was a heavy, perfectly sealed casket made entirely of lead. The thing nobody tells you is just how significant that is. Making a lead coffin back then was an incredibly expensive and labor-intensive process. The lead had to be mined, melted down, hammered into sheets, and then expertly soldered shut to be airtight. This wasn't for your average Joe. It was for the 1%ers of the 14th century. So even before they opened it, the team knew they were onto someone important. Maybe a high-ranking knight or a powerful church official. When the lid was finally pried off, a wave of stunned silence fell over the dig site. They were all expecting to see a skeleton. Instead, they found a man. A man whose body was so astonishingly well preserved it looked like he had only recently passed away. His skin, though yellowed and shrunken, still covered his body. His fingernails were perfectly visible, and his hair still clung to his scalp. It was a mind-blowing sight. When they examined his torso, they discovered that even his internal organs were still there, something virtually unheard of in a burial this old. It was as if time had stopped for this man the moment he was laid to rest. This find changed everything. The normal archaeological process of bagging and tagging bones went out the window. This was no longer just an old burial, it was a biological time capsule. They had to bring in specialists and handle the body with extreme care. The man was moved to a lab where pathologists could perform a full autopsy, something that felt more like a modern investigation than an ancient one. For the first time, they could ask questions that went far beyond how old he was. They could investigate his health, his diet, and even the diseases he might have carried. Tiny samples of hair and tissue were taken, promising to unlock secrets of a life lived 600 years ago. Who was this man? And what incredible circumstances led to his impossible preservation? The body was a puzzle, but the clues were pointing toward a forgotten chapter of history. Who was Anthony de Lucy? After careful research, the mystery man from the lead coffin was identified as Anthony de Lucy, the third Baron Lucy of Cockermouth. His name might not be as famous as other medieval figures, but in the 14th century, the de Lucy family was a major power in northern England. They were a dynasty of tough, battle-hardened lords who controlled vast lands along the wild and dangerous border with Scotland. From their stronghold at Cockermouth Castle, the de Lucys were the first line of defense against Scottish raids, and their family crest, 3 intertwined fish known as Lucys, was a symbol of authority that everyone in the region recognized. Anthony de Lucy was born in 1332, right into a world of conflict and obligation. As a baron, he inherited not only wealth and land, but also heavy responsibilities. His job was to manage his estates, keep his people safe, and most importantly, answer the king's call to war. The king at the time was Edward III, a man obsessed with claiming the French throne, which kicked off the famous 100 Years' War. For a nobleman like Anthony, this meant a life split between fighting the French overseas and defending his home from the ever-present threat of the Scots. The borderlands were a place of constant tension. Scottish raiders, taking advantage of England's distraction in France, would sweep down to burn villages and steal livestock. For marcher lords like Anthony, Holding the line wasn't a matter of glory, it was a matter of survival. But his duties didn't end at the border. Like many ambitious knights of his era, Anthony was drawn to the larger conflicts in Europe. Many people are crazy about the idea of the crusades, and in the 14th century, the fight was still going on. Anthony traveled to Prussia to join the Teutonic Knights, a military order dedicated to converting the last pagans in Lithuania. For knights like him, this was a chance to earn honor, prove their faith, and make powerful connections. It was on one of these campaigns in the late 1360s that Anthony's story takes a dark turn. He passed away in 1368, far from his home in Cumbria. We don't know the exact cause. It could have been from battle wounds, disease, or just bad luck on the road. What we do know is that his family went to extraordinary lengths to bring him home. You see, most knights who perished abroad were buried right where they fell. Transporting a body hundreds of miles across Europe was incredibly difficult, dangerous, and expensive. Yet Anthony's family had his body recovered, placed in that custom-made lead coffin, and shipped all the way back to England. That single act speaks volumes about his importance. They chose St. Bees Priory for his final resting place because the de Lucy family had been patrons of the church for generations. By burying him in the chancel, they were ensuring he would be honored forever. But the autopsy would soon reveal that his end was anything but peaceful. Nature's perfect time capsule. When forensic specialists began their examination of Anthony de Lucy, they uncovered a story written in his very flesh. The state of his body was, to put it mildly, unprecedented. His torso was strangely puffed up, a result of his internal organs remaining intact and sealed within his chest cavity. This was not the typical collapsed form of ancient remains. It was as if his body had been frozen in its final moments. But it was the hidden injuries that told the most dramatic tale. The autopsy revealed that several of his ribs had been shattered with incredible force. These weren't clean breaks. They were crushing injuries consistent with brutal, blunt force trauma. The damage was so severe that the broken ribs had punctured his lungs, causing them to collapse and leading to massive internal bleeding. The thing nobody tells you is that this kind of injury points directly to medieval warfare. The crushing blows were likely delivered by a weapon like a mace or a warhammer, designed to smash through armor. The evidence was clear. Anthony de Lucy had not gone peacefully. He had met a violent end on the battlefield, a fate common for a 14th century knight. But this still didn't answer the biggest question. How did his body survive for 600 years? The first clue was the lead coffin. By being soldered shut, it created a nearly perfect anaerobic environment, meaning it was sealed off from oxygen. Without oxygen, the bacteria that cause decomposition can't do their work. The body was essentially locked in a time capsule. Next, the environment inside the coffin played a key role. The moisture from the body, trapped in the sealed space, interacted with his body fats to create a waxy, soap-like substance called adipocere, or grave wax. This substance coated parts of his body, forming a protective barrier that prevented further decay. What many overlooked was the role of the soil itself. The cool, damp earth of St. Bees Priory acted as a natural refrigerator, further slowing down any chemical processes. The combination of the airtight coffin, the formation of grave wax, and the cool ground created a perfect storm of preservation. Some theories suggested that he must have been deliberately embalmed. After all, he passed away in Prussia, more than 1,000 miles away, and transporting him would have taken weeks. Embalming was a known practice for royalty, using resins, spices, and alcohols to preserve the body. However, when scientists tested his remains, they found no trace of any known embalming agents. No pine resin, no unusual chemicals, nothing. He was simply wrapped in a linen shroud and sealed away. The mystery deepened. It seemed nature alone had turned this medieval knight into an almost perfect mummy, a one-in-a-billion accident. But Anthony de Lucy isn't the only body from the past to defy decay. More bodies that defy time. The incredible preservation of Anthony de Lucy might seem like a unique event, but you see, he's part of a small, mysterious club of ancient bodies that have inexplicably defied the passage of time. One of the most famous examples is the Boxton Man, found in a Swedish peat bog in 1936. Dating back to the same 14th century period, this man was preserved not by a lead coffin, but by the bog itself. Bogs are naturally acidic and have very low oxygen levels, which tans the skin and preserves soft tissues, turning the body into a natural leather-like mummy. What's crazy about Boxten Man is that he was found wearing the only complete medieval male outfit ever discovered in Europe. But his story, like de Lucy's, has a violent twist. His skull was crushed by multiple blows, and a wooden stake had been driven through his heart, pinning him to the bottom of the bog. Many believe he was a tax collector who met a nasty end and was staked down to prevent his ghost from seeking revenge. Then there's the strange case of Knight Friedrich von Kulbutz, a German nobleman who passed away in 1702. Legend says that he swore an oath of innocence in a legal dispute, declaring, "If I am guilty, then may my body never rot." Well, whether he was guilty or not is lost to history, but his body never did rot. When his tomb was opened decades later, his corpse was found to be naturally mummified, without any signs of embalming. To this day, his leathery remains are on display, a local legend that science struggles to fully explain. Unlike the St. Bees Knight, whose preservation can be chalked up to his unique burial conditions, nobody is quite sure why von Kulbutz remains intact. From the oxygen-starved bogs of Scandinavia to the sealed crypts of Germany, these remarkable cases show that impossible preservation can happen in a multitude of ways. What connects them all is the profound mystery they embody, a phenomenon that blurs the line between hard science and enduring legend. For centuries, the interpretation was overwhelmingly spiritual. In the medieval world, a body that didn't decay was often declared a sign of sainthood, a divine miracle known as incorruptibility. Saints like Bernadette of Lourdes and Catherine of Siena were said to have remained perfectly preserved long after their passing, transforming their physical remains into holy relics. To believers, this was no mere quirk of nature. It was a powerful sign of divine favor, tangible proof that the individual had lived a life of such purity that God Himself had shielded them from the indignities of decomposition. This belief reinforced faith, providing a physical anchor for spiritual devotion and turning tombs into sacred pilgrimage sites. Of course, scientists have other ideas. They point to specific and rare environmental factors: a complete lack of oxygen that halts bacterial growth, unique chemical compositions in the soil that tan the skin like leather, or extremely dry, arid conditions that lead to rapid desiccation. These theories are logical and based on observable principles of chemistry and biology. The thing is, even with all our modern technology and understanding, we can't perfectly replicate the precise, delicate balance of conditions that preserved these bodies so exquisitely. Anthony de Lucy remains a scientific marvel precisely because he defies easy categorization. He wasn't a saint, and he wasn't intentionally buried in a preservative bog. He was just a knight whose unique burial created a perfect accidental mummification that continues to puzzle researchers. His story, and those of the other silent ones, forces us to confront the limits of our own knowledge and wonder if we're missing a key detail in the natural order of things. Is the preservation of Anthony de Lucy a miracle, or just a lucky accident of chemistry? What other secrets from the past are waiting just beneath our feet? Let us know your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into the unknown.